Hello, welcome to the Apartment Rouge. I'm dressed like this because I want to be warm right now. Being warm is more important to me than fashion. There is still ice on the tops of the mountains where we had the ice storm last week that has not melted, and now they are saying that we are going to experience 3 winter storms over the course of the next 7 days, starting today. So I'm like, yep, I am being warm, so I put on this really warm house dress. Anyway, my name is Sabne Raznik, and this is the channel here on YouTube where I do what I call mini readings. By which I mean there is usually just one poem being read, sometimes my work, sometimes that of others. I have been working really hard over the last few years to get a true variety of poets and different kinds of work on this channel that reflect world poetry all over the place. And of course, I'm reading the English translations because that is my mother tongue. But if you find a poem on this channel that you really enjoy, I encourage you, if you are able to read it, to look up the original language in which it is written and read it there, because we all know that poetry in translation is an entirely different animal than the original poem. Not that it's any better or any worse, it's just completely different because of the nature of poetry and the nature of differing languages. So if you are able to read the original language in which that poem is written, by all means look it up and read it in that language and enjoy it, both in the English translation that I have read on this channel and also in the beautiful original form that the poet wrote it in. Today I would like to read a poem by Bell Hooks, she doesn't identify as an Appalachian poet, but she is, in fact, an Appalachian poet, an African-American Appalachian poet. And she writes a beautiful foreword to this particular book, which is Appalachian Elegy, in which I was like reading it and like doing this the whole time, talking about how she was shaped by things that are now viewed as Appalachian values, which is basically the right of every human to be self-determining, but also recognizing that in order to have that right, one also must have the responsibility to maintain personal integrity at all costs, and extend that integrity to others, so that while you have the freedom to be self-determining, you are not committing any crimes against any other person, and you are also allowing them to be self-determining. I think it's a very, very interesting foreword. So I encourage you, if you have access to this book, by all means get it. The poetry in it is fantastic, but also that foreword is like, for me, I love it. I love it. Anyway, I'm going to read. The poems in this book are not titled. I'm going to read number 44. Fly high, dreaming bird, higher and higher on the wire of time. No roadblocks, no stopping to think through while wings flap. What makes the worthy soar? Only this pure heaven, right now, sky high. I love that. It's so empowering. But y'all know I just love birds anyway. But that particular poem is just like, it makes you feel like, yeah. All right. Well, this is going to be a relatively short mini reading. I'm not going to do a whole lot of chatting. I've made several videos today already. For the duration of the pandemic, beginning last March, when the whole world kind of went into isolation together, I have been reading different books on Instagram. I read IGTV. I read, let me see if I can remember. Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Paton, which is about South Africa in the time of apartheid. I read River of Earth by James Steele, which is a story about Appalachia during the Great Depression. Very based on one family. It's very, very interesting. It brought up a lot of personal memories of family members who have long passed on from me. Also, we read, which I think everyone should read, Under the Eye of the Clock by Christopher Nolan, which is his autobiography. And I'm not talking about the director Christopher Nolan. I'm talking about the author Christopher Nolan from Ireland. It's his autobiography, and of course he had cerebral palsy, which I also have. But his was so, mine is a mild case, complicated by age and time. But his was a severe case where he was completely locked into his body. He could not communicate for a long time until they invented a new kind of muscle relaxer that allowed him to move his neck. As long as he had his mother's support, he could move his neck. She helped him with that. And they put what they called a unicorn device on his head that allowed him to type one letter at a time. And that's how he wrote his books. He wrote 3 books. He wrote, the first one is a poetry collection called Damn Burst of Dreams. The second one is the book that I read, Under the Eye of the Clock, which is his autobiography, although he changes his name and the names of others in it. And the last book he read was called The Banyan Tree, and it's epic. It's a big book. And he died at the age of 42 or 43, which is not terribly uncommon in cases of severe cerebral palsy. But he had quite the interesting life. And I encourage everybody to read that autobiography. I think it should be required reading everywhere, because it is one of the very few places we have in any kind of modern media where you get to see disability from the inside out rather than the outside in, which is so important for breaking down barriers created by ableism. Because people absorb ableism and don't even realize it. And of course, eventually everybody becomes disabled at some point in their life. I think it's part of what makes disability so frightening for people, is because they know when they're looking at somebody born disabled that that's going to be me in my old age. And so they want to block that out. And I understand that. But it's wrong. It's wrong. We're all human beings. And so that book allows you to see disability from the inside out. What is it like to be in a disabled person's body and try to maneuver through an able-bodied person's world? And Christopher Nolan was in a very beautiful environment, because the Irish are, as you know, the stereotypically super friendly. And that shows in that book, because he was able to break barriers for disabled people. As far as education is what the book mostly centers on. And the people that he had around him were, for the most part, very welcoming and very not ableist, which was beautiful. Not at all what it was like to break those kind of boundaries in the U.S., as I can attest to, having been one of those people who had to break those boundaries that were set for disabled people, that barred them from the education that able-bodied people get. From the time I was born, I was sort of forced into an activist role, whether I wanted it or not, in order to break boundaries, like education boundaries and accessibility boundaries. And even to this day, I get things thrown in my lap that I have to fight against. And I look at it as, I'm not just doing this for me, right? I'm doing it for everybody who comes after me. And that's kind of the attitude that Christopher Nolan had. Although, in terms of the people that he had around him, and in terms of the general population's accepting of him, he had an easier time of it than I did. I'm not jealous, though. I thought it was beautiful. But I encourage everybody to read that book. It's so important. And then now we are reading the poetry of Yeats, which, if that book doesn't get us through the pandemic, I don't know what will, because it's a really thick book. But if it doesn't, if we finish Yeats and we're still in the pandemic, then we will read Seamus Heaney. We'll just keep right on going. But I've been doing that on Instagram to give people a space where they can go for anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes out of their day, because Instagram only allows videos up to 15 minutes. Take a moment, do something a little bit more edifying than television. There's nothing wrong with television, but, you know, take in some different form of media and take a moment to just breathe. That's what I'm doing over there. So I encourage you, if you have an Instagram account, find me at Sabne Raznik on Instagram and join me in that. I post almost every day a Yeats poem. We're doing daily Yeats right now. And of course, you can, each book is serialized, so you can go back and find each one of those books and all the videos that I made regarding that and follow the reading of those books since the beginning of March 2020. So, and I will continue to do that until the world figures out its new normal, or however this is going to work as the pandemic comes to a close, because we need that space to breathe for our mental and emotional well-being. That's really been my theme, is taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally, which I think right now is even more important than the physical, even though the physical is getting all the attention. So go over there, check that out. I also, after I upload those videos to Instagram every day, I post them on Facebook. So if you don't have Instagram, you can find me on Facebook and still keep up with the Daily Yeats. But I thank you for joining me today for a little smidgen of bell hooks. And if you like this channel, by all means subscribe and share. I don't post here on a schedule, which is probably what keeps it rather small. But the purpose of the channel is mostly just educational and entertainment, to spread the joy of poetry, especially world poetry. I've really been working on getting a real, true, diverse catalog going on this channel to introduce you to maybe a poet you've never heard of before. So go back through. There's almost 100 videos now going back to 2011. Go back through and see what you find and just enjoy. And yeah, subscribe so you will be notified the next time I post a video on here, because I don't do it on a schedule. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for enjoying poetry with me and joining me in the living room of the Appalachian Elegy for just a moment of bell hooks. And I hope to see you over on Instagram or on Facebook, or whenever I post again on this channel. Sometimes also on this channel I'll post where we've been doing virtual poetry readings over Zoom, and I record those. I'll post those poetry readings on this channel too, so you'll find those. But anyway, I'll see you on here soon. As the Cherokees say, Donadago honey, till we meet again. Bye.